Evacuated from LA fires, now trapped in my parents' house. So, here's my life right now. For privacy reasons, I will not be using my real name nor of my family. I'm 24, married, and we have a beautiful 3-month-old baby girl. My husband, Jake, and I live in Los Angeles, or did, at least. Last week, the fires turned our lives into a living nightmare. We barely escaped, and now we're stuck at my parents' house in Kansas with family drama that's going to send me to an early grave. Let me rewind to the fire. It started as just another bad air quality day, those days when you're told not to run your AC because it'll suck smoke into your home, and your car windshield gets coated in ash like a dusting of doom. By mid-afternoon, the sky turned a surreal shade of burnt orange, and a weird twilight set in. The sun, dimmed by smoke, looked like a blood-red orb. I told myself it was fine. Fires happened all the time in LA. We weren't in an evacuation zone, and our apartment building felt like it was a world away from the chaos. That night, we went to bed uneasy. Jake double-checked the news before lying down. I remember him muttering, "Looks like it's spreading fast," but we were exhausted, new parents, running on fumes. We passed out, not realizing it would be the last peaceful sleep we'd have for a long time. Around 2 a.m., we woke up to a pounding on the door. At first, I thought it was a nightmare, the kind you're grateful to shake off. But the pounding was real, relentless. Then came the yelling, "You need to leave now. The fire's too close." I stumbled out of bed in a daze. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Smoke had already seeped into the apartment, and every breath burned my lungs. The baby monitor showed our daughter, Lily, still sleeping soundly. I remember thinking, how is she so calm when the world is literally on fire? Jake was already moving, grabbing anything he could get his hands on. "Diapers," he said, his voice tight. "Formula. Her blanket. Get her blanket." I scooped up Lily, who woke and immediately started wailing. Her cries were drowned out by the cacophony outside of sirens, yelling, the roar of the fire itself. It was like the world was ending. Every second felt like an hour as I scrambled to find shoes, clothes, anything. The power was out, so we only had the light of our phones to guide us. Shadows danced across the walls, and every creak of the building made me think it was about to collapse. By the time we made it to the car, the scene outside was pure chaos. The air was thick with ash, and the heat was suffocating. Flames were visible in the distance, flickering like malevolent spirits. People were running, some clutching pets, others dragging suitcases. Cars were gridlocked, horns blaring as drivers tried to force their way through. The air was so toxic that my eyes watered non-stop. I could taste the bitterness of the smoke, and every breath felt like inhaling razor blades. Jake drove like a man possessed. "Hold on," he said, gripping the wheels so tightly his knuckles turned white. The baby was screaming in the back seat, her tiny face red and tear-streaked. I held her close, trying to soothe her, but I couldn't stop shaking. My mind kept replaying worst-case scenarios, the car stalling, the fire overtaking us, running out of air. At one point, we hit a stretch of road shrouded in thick, black smoke. We couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. It felt like driving into oblivion. I remember Jake saying, "Keep the windows up. Don't breathe if you can help it." The smoke was so dense it felt like it had weight, pressing down on us. I've never been more terrified in my life. Lily's cries were the only sound, and they were getting weaker. I kept thinking, she's not getting enough air. None of us are. Finally, we broke through to clearer skies. The freeway was packed, but at least we were moving. We didn't stop except for gas, and even that was nerve-wracking. The gas station was crowded with panicked evacuees, and the air still reeked of smoke. Jake had to practically fight his way to the pump while I stayed in the car, clutching Lily like she was my lifeline. By the time we reached Kansas and pulled into my parents' driveway, we were hollow shells of ourselves. The relief of being safe was fleeting. A neighbor called to confirm our apartment building had burned to the ground. No insurance payouts, no deposit back. Nothing. Everything we owned was gone. And then came the fresh hell that is my parents' house. My mom greeted us with hugs and an immediate critique of how we'd handled the baby during the evacuation. "You shouldn't have driven through smoke like that," she said. "You should have gone the other way." As if we had options. She's been on our case ever since. She insists on overseeing every diaper change and bottle feeding, making snide comments like, "Are you sure that's how you're supposed to do it?" She's constantly reminding us how expensive it is to host us, saying things like, "I guess we'll keep footing the grocery bill until you figure things out." Thanks, Mom. Real helpful. My dad, meanwhile, barely talks to us unless it's to suggest Jake should step up and get a job in Kansas. California obviously didn't work out, he'll say with a smug little shrug. Jake's been nothing but patient, but I see the strain on his face. We're both hanging by a thread. Then there's my sister, Rachel. She's furious that we're here because it meant giving up her art studio, aka the basement. She's made it her mission to make us feel unwelcome, from blasting music while the baby naps to accidentally taking my laundry out of the dryer to do hers. And as if that weren't enough, she's been shamelessly flirting with Jake. She laughs at everything he says, leans in way too close, and bats her eyelashes like she's auditioning for a rom-com. Jake's clearly uncomfortable, and I'm ready to explode, but Rachel acts like I'm imagining it. And let's not forget her boyfriend, Kyle. Kyle, who is permanently shirtless, thinks now is the perfect time to pitch Jake on his blockchain startup. Dude, we're homeless. Read the room. Every day here feels like a new test of my sanity. The fire was a nightmare, but this slow, grinding chaos is its own kind of hell. Jake and I are trying to figure out what's next. What's next? Jake and I have spent hours whispering plans late at night while the baby sleeps. It feels like the only time we can think straight without my mom's comments, my dad's judgment, or Rachel's passive-aggressive antics. Right now, the options feel overwhelming, but we're trying to break them down into manageable steps. First, we need to stabilize financially. Jake's been searching for remote work opportunities, something he can do while we figure out where to live long-term. He's reached out to old colleagues and even applied for some freelance gigs. It's not ideal, but it's a start. Meanwhile, I've been exploring part-time online jobs that I can do while taking care of Lily. It's not much, but every little bit helps. Second, we're looking into housing options. Rebuilding in LA feels impossible right now. The cost of living, the trauma of what we just went through, and the lack of insurance make it a non-starter. We've talked about smaller cities where rent is cheaper and there's still potential for work. Denver, Austin, maybe somewhere in the Midwest. The idea of starting fresh is both terrifying and exciting. Third, we're trying to gather resources. I've been in touch with disaster relief organizations to see if there's any financial aid we qualify for. It's humbling, but I'll swallow my pride if it means getting us out of my parents' house sooner. We've also made a list of friends we might be able to stay with temporarily, even just a few weeks away from this environment would be a godsend. Most importantly, we're trying to hold on to each other. Jake and I have been through so much in such a short time, and it's easy to let the stress drive a wedge between us. But we've made a pact to keep communicating, to remind each other that we're in this together. I keep telling myself that this is just a chapter, a horrible, messy chapter, but a chapter nonetheless. We'll get through this. We have to. For Lily, for us, for the life we're determined to rebuild. Thanks for reading, Internet. I needed to vent before I implode. If anyone has advice, or a spare room far, far away, I'm all ears.